What if the reason a visual schedule isn't working for a child isn't because the child can't handle it, but because we haven't adjusted the right variable yet? Today, I want to walk you through exactly what to tweak first when a child isn't responding to a visual schedule. Not from a place of blame, not from a place of they are not ready, but from a place of curiosity. Because before we abandon the schedule, there are several things we can adjust, and most of them are simpler than you think. I'm Tara Phillips, and this is the Autism Little Learners podcast, where I share simple, neuro-affirming tools to support young autistic children with compassion and confidence. I get messages like this all the time. He just ignores the visual schedule, or she rips the pictures off and throws them on the ground. He grabs the one he wants and melts down when I say no. Or she won't even look at it, and we tried visuals. They don't work for her. And I want to gently say something important. When a visual schedule isn't working, it's almost never because the child doesn't respond to visuals. It's usually because something about the fit is off. The length, the symbols, the delivery, the modeling, the nervous system load. Visual schedules are powerful tools, but tools only work when they match the developmental level and regulation capacity of the person using them. So instead of scrapping the visual schedule, let's troubleshoot thoughtfully. What if the child is treating the visual schedule like a choice board? This is one of the most common things I see in preschool classrooms. The schedule has multiple pictures, maybe a half day, a full day. The child walks up and immediately grabs recess or snack or home or their favorite activity. And when we say not yet, we get a meltdown. That's not manipulation. That's not defiance. It's the child communicating, I see something I want, and I don't understand yet that it's part of a sequence. When a child grabs an icon meant for later, it tells me that they may not understand that the schedule represents an order, a sequence, rather than options. So here are the first two things that I would adjust. One of the things you can do is add a visual anchor to the current activity. Sometimes it's as simple as placing a laminated yellow square underneath the picture that they need to take first, or a small little arrow, or placing a now picture slightly separated from the others. The highlight communicates direction. This one, right now, we start here. And it reduces visual scanning and overwhelm. And it reduces the feeling that the whole day is up for negotiation. Sometimes that one small change creates clarity immediately. They know exactly which one to go to first. Option 2 would be to shorten the schedule. If highlighting doesn't help, I would shorten it back to one picture at a time. Even if they're 5, even if they can verbally label every activity, even if the rest of the class has a half-day schedule, because understanding symbols verbally is not the same as understanding a sequence visually. We can rebuild the routine. We check the schedule, take the picture, transition, place in the location we're going to. We do it calmly, we model repeatedly, and only once that routine feels automatic and regulated do we expand to 2 pictures, then 3. If the child's grabbing future icons, the schedule is probably too long, too big for their current processing capacity. And shrinking it is not lowering expectations, it's building comprehension. If you want a deeper dive into schedule length, go back and listen to episode 164. That entire episode walks through how much information a child can hold at one time. Now let's say they aren't just grabbing future icons. They're just not engaging. They don't look at the visual schedule. They walk past it like there's nothing there. And that's when I ask, do these symbols actually mean something to them? Because if the symbol doesn't connect to the experience, the schedule becomes a decoration. We talked about symbols and the symbol continuum in episode 165. If you're using clipart and it's not clicking, move along the continuum. Less abstract, more concrete. Try real photos of your actual classroom. Pictures of your rug, your sink, your snack table. If it still doesn't click, move to objects. And not miniature representations to start, real functional objects. As we talked about in episode 165, a real spoon, a real puzzle piece, a real paintbrush, a real diaper. If they understand objects better than pictures, that's not a deficit. it's developmental information. And when we match the symbol to their current symbolic understanding, the visual schedule starts to make sense for them. The other thing I want to talk about is matching the symbol to the location of where they're going. This is something we often skip or don't think about. We assume that if they can carry the symbol, they understand where they're going. But can they match it? If I hand the child a picture of playground, do they walk towards the door? If I hand them a puzzle piece, do they bring it to the puzzle table? If not, they may need a landing mat. And I started all of my preschoolers with a landing mat that they match the picture or the object to the location. The landing mat is a matching symbol that's at the destination. So if we're transitioning to the art table, there's a small matching icon already placed there with Velcro on it. The child brings the symbol they have in their hand and matches it, puts it on the Velcro on that landing mat. This simple act strengthens the connection. This picture equals this place. And so all of our visual schedule pictures were surrounding places that we did the activities rather than pictures of actual activities. And that act of matching builds understanding over time. Without matching, symbols can feel abstract and disconnected. With matching, they feel purposeful. And then one of the other things I really want you to think about is how the schedule is being delivered. This is one of the biggest overlooked variables. If the schedule is mounted in one centralized location, can it be taken off and brought to the child? For some students, walking from the activity they're doing to the schedule area is organizing. For others, this additional transition layered on top of an already hard transition is really difficult. Imagine a child who's deeply engaged in their play and they're told, clean up, walk to the schedule, take the picture off, now go to circle time. Those are multiple shifts. And for some children, especially those with motor planning challenges or high anxiety around transitions, it's too much. You can keep the visual schedule Velcroed in one location, but remove the now picture and bring it to the child. Here's what's next. The slight adjustment can reduce resistance dramatically. It shifts the schedule from a demand to a support. And another thing we need to think about is, are we modeling or quizzing? So let's go deeper for a moment. How are we introducing the schedule? Are we calmly modeling or are we asking performance questions like, what's next? Where are we going? Point to it. What does that say? If the schedule becomes a test, the nervous system shifts. Instead of predictability, it becomes pressure. Visual schedules aren't comprehension quizzes, they are environmental supports. Sometimes the most important shift is reducing language. So you might point, model, narrate softly. This says snack. You're not asking them, but you're just narrating it. This says snack or snack next, or first clean up, then snack, without requiring them to respond, without requiring output. When adults are anxious about whether the schedule is working, we sometimes add urgency, but urgency adds stress, and stress interferes with learning. So let's look at this through a nervous system lens. If a child is ripping icons, avoiding the schedule, melting down when they see it, fixating on one part of it, ignoring it completely, pause and ask, is this overload? Is the schedule too long, too visually busy, too abstract, too far away, unpredictable, too new? Sometimes the schedule itself becomes overwhelming, and sometimes it's not the schedule at all, it's the transition happening around it. If the child's already dysregulated, even a perfectly designed schedule will not land. Regulation comes first, then visuals, always. When a schedule fits inside a child's window of tolerance, you'll see the difference. It's calm, predictable, almost boring, and boring is good. I once worked with a student who would grab recess every single morning and cry when redirected. The teacher thought, oh, he's being really stubborn. And when we shortened the schedule to 2 things, this is what's now and this is what's next, that behavior disappeared. Recess didn't disappear. It just wasn't living in his nervous system all morning. This small adjustment changed the entire day. Another child wouldn't carry the picture icons. They dropped them immediately. But when we handed them the real puzzle piece from the table activity, they carried it confidently and put it into the puzzle. The transition smoothed out. Same concept, different fit. If they're grabbing future icons, highlight now or shorten it. If they're ignoring it, move down the symbol continuum. If they're wandering, add a matching landing mat. If they're resisting transitions, adjust the delivery. Maybe you bring it to them. If it feels tense, examine the adult's nervous system and maybe the pressure we're putting on them. If it feels overwhelming, reduce the load. Before you scrap the schedule, adjust the fit. And that's the message today. When a visual schedule isn't working, it doesn't mean the child failed. And it doesn't mean we've failed. It means the system needs refinement. And that refinement doesn't require starting over. It requires curiosity on our part. Visual schedules are not all or nothing. They're adjustable. And when we approach with flexibility instead of rigidity, they become powerful again. If you've ever thought, well, we tried visuals, they don't work. I hope this episode gave you a new lens. Before you give up on the schedule, adjust one variable and then observe. And remember, we went deeper into the visual schedule length in episode 164 and the symbol selection in episode 165 if you want to revisit those pieces. Thank you for spending this time with me. You're doing important work and the small supports you put into place matter. Keep leading with connection, and I'll talk to you again next week.